Hey folks, I have recently submitted a proposal for the implementation of reconnaissance aircraft and related game mechanics for them in War Thunder. I sent this through my content creator communications channel because I try to use that responsibly instead of just to complain about things I think are overpowered. And I wanted to share it with you guys because I believe in transparency, and if you all weren't watching my stuff, I wouldn't be able to send things like this off to Gaijin. So, the basic overview is that this would add photographic reconnaissance cameras for aircraft, and it would provide some gameplay elements to go with them. Cameras could be available either from camera pods, like a loadout option like the targeting pods are now, or as a built-in system in reconnaissance aircraft, the way that a plane would have like radar or like a CCIP, ballistics computer. In air battles, cameras could be used to perform battlefield photography of pre-designated hotspots. The basic gameplay objective would be to take pictures of those specific things and then return to the airfield with the photos still loaded on the aircraft before you get shot down. If the recon plane returns to base and lands on the runway with the useful pictures, the player, and perhaps the team, would get bonus points, similar to like the useful actions in arcade battles, or the points you get from, blowing up a base when you're flying a bomber. In ground battles, the camera equipment could be used to spot ground targets, on a cooldown, obviously, otherwise it'd be really overpowered, that are inside the camera's, field of view in the focus distance, giving it a spotted indicator as if it was spotted by, like, a ground scout vehicle. And really give some, real purpose to actually having aircraft with a radio that, in theory, should be able to tell things, on the ground, hey, there's a guy over behind that hill. Anyway, so let's go through the details on how this might work. The cameras could be added to aircraft as an equipment option. This could be an equipable upgrade, similar to how some of the aircraft have like the chaff and flare dispensers that can be equipped from the upgrade screen after you research them, like the F-8U-2, for example. Or on other aircraft, the camera pod could be taken as like an external loadout option, similar to how some aircraft have targeting pods as a loadout choice, like the Jaguar A. This flexibility could allow cameras to be backfitted to a significant number of aircraft already in the game. For example, the MiG-21 F-13 could have an upgrade option to upgrade the MiG-21 FR, similar to how the Kika has the Otsu mod upgrade, which changes its guns. The MiG-21 F-13 could have the MiG-21 FR upgrade that, when you select it, it would swap out the internal gun and the radar rangefinder and replace them with the belly-mounted camera pod. Other aircraft, such as like the Canberra bomber, could unlock a loadout slot camera pod, similar to how like the heavier bomb sizes can be unlocked. You'd unlock it as like a regular payload option. Now, the idea is that the cameras would have both a field of view and a focusing range. The field of view would be fairly self-explanatory, and it would work similar to a bomb sight. You zoom in, there's only a certain amount of stuff you can see, right? The focus range would be the range from the aircraft that the target needs to be at in order to focus it and take a good picture. For example, some cameras would have a minimum range of like 500 meters, other might have a maximum range of like 2 kilometers. Now, in order to take a picture, the target would need to be both inside the camera's focus range and inside its field of view. And before you worry and think that that might be too limited, just as like food for thought, the camera equipment on the U-2 spy plane was preset and pre-focused for the altitude they knew that it was going to be flying at. If you took a U-2 and tried to take a picture of something on the ground from only like 1,000 feet away, it would just be a blurry mess. You wouldn't be able to see anything. But when it's taking pictures up from those insanely high, still classified, I think, altitudes, you get the good, crisp, in-focus images that were used for intelligence. Now, from the external view on a plane, like in arcade battles maybe, or if you had, an upgraded camera system on more advanced aircraft, there could be an indicator on the ground similar to how the CCIP works for bombs that would show where the camera is being aimed, and or the pilot could switch into the camera view like a bomb sight or a targeting pod to actually snap the pictures. And that would probably have to be on a cooldown, or there'd be like a limited number of pictures that the camera system could store, depending on what kind of camera it was and all that. Now, more advanced camera pods at the higher tiers could possibly be aimable, similar to laser targeting pods that we already have, while some of the more basic camera setups at the lower tiers would be kind of fixed, like bomb sights are currently implemented. There's just one place that the camera's pointing. In terms of the maps, now this is where, there's a lot of flexibility for how this could actually get implemented into some game modes and stuff. Hotspot targets on the maps could be strategic bombing targets. They're already on the maps, and, it provides sort of a unified objective, and it would sort of fit thematically with recon aircraft, photographing targets, to confirm them, for the bombers, or maybe like they're assessing the battle damage, after the bombers have already dumped their stuff all over it, whatever. Point is, the strategic bombing points are already placed on the maps, and they could be doubled up as reconnaissance targets. Also, enemy airfields are an obvious reconnaissance target. It's a fixed map feature that's already there. Also, other map features that are already existing on the maps could be newly designated as camera targets. Bridges, important buildings, some of the fortresses on a few of the maps, like military shipyards, cities, things of that nature. Now, some small amount of points could be awarded for taking a valid picture on the target. Like, you get some points if you drop a bomb on a strategic base or you blow up an AI ground unit, right? This could represent, like, radioing in a target's location and some basic info. And it would give the reconnaissance aircraft some way to get some points at all, even if they don't make it back to base. Now, a significantly higher amount of points could be awarded for actually landing back at the airfield and escaping combat with a valid picture stored on the plane, similar to like destroying a player vehicle in terms of like maybe the points you'd get, or destroying a strategic base. This would represent, returning from the battlefield with detailed intelligence for your guys to check out. And also, that could probably bleed some tickets from the other team. Now, shooting down a recon plane that was loaded with valid pictures gives options for a slight bonus like the wingman or surprise little trophy you get at the end of the battle, and probably bleed some tickets as well. And the more you think about this, the more you think of like all sorts of different angles this could add to the meta, both in realistic and arcade battles at high and low tiers. It could create new objectives, and at the higher tiers, it could provide an analog to bomber gameplay so that folks who came up the ranks, doing flying bomber mains, people who went up through the American tech tree in the B-17 series and stuff like that, could have something to do at the higher tiers that was more familiar to them, rather than being like pigeonholed into this more narrow and more narrow and more narrow dogfight meta as time goes forward. And really, the more I think about this, there's so many other ideas that I didn't put into this proposal because I didn't want it to be like 30 pages long. But adding some of these gameplay mechanics would really create a lot of potential for them to be expanded onto other things. You could spawn into, for example, it would allow the addition of dedicated recon drones. And I don't mean like the little micro drone things that scout vehicles get. Like you can spawn in currently right now in the higher tier ground battles into the UCAVs, the Hellfire armed Predator drones and things. I'm sorry, the Reaper drones and things like that. This would provide a game system that could be used to spawn into a photo reconnaissance drone that would allow you to spot targets for your team, from the air with camera equipment that was on a cooldown, even if that drone didn't have other weapons. It provides a lot of options for new events, interception missions for new aircraft that they add in. I mean, all kinds of stuff. This sort of thing really could be expanded out to do a lot more than I'm going through here. And even if some of the details were not exactly as I'm describing them here, this sort of a framework could serve as the foundation for a set of game mechanics. In any case, in combined battles, when you're flying out as close air support in a ground battle, aircraft that are equipped with the camera pods would have the ability to spot player vehicles on the ground, only one at a time, obviously, and on a cooldown. Basically the same way as it's implemented for scouting vehicles. And the way I imagine that working is, you aim your camera at a spot, at a guy on the ground, and if there's a player target within a few degrees of the center of where you're aiming the camera, it would be able to scout it. And if there were multiple targets, it would only scout one of them. A way to have it be implemented without being completely overpowered and really breaking things. And that's why, again, having it on a cooldown and stuff would be really important, because I have an interest in submitting things like this and making sure I've thought of, okay, how could this be abused and really break some of the current stuff, and how do we prevent that abuse? One of the ways that I thought of potential abuse was a recon vehicle, taking a wide-angle shot of the battlefield and scouting the entire enemy team. Well, obviously, can't have that. So, just put some limitations on it. Have it on a cooldown, one target at a time. Has to be within, a narrow field of view, and only scout the target closest to the center of your camera reticle. Seems pretty obvious. Now, not only would the addition of the camera and reconnaissance features allow, modifications and upgrades to some aircraft that are already in the game, it would also allow the addition of a large assortment of new aircraft that were either built primarily as reconnaissance aircraft, or they ended up seeing some major use as a recon platform in addition to the traditional combat duties. Examples, of some dedicated recon aircraft, and some of them do carry a little bit of conventional weaponry, by the way, in addition to the camera equipment, so that could be interesting, sort of like a multi-role thing. Some examples include, the Soko J-20, the OV-10A Bronco, and that's a really good example of a reconnaissance aircraft that sometimes went out in a dual mission profile where they'd load some, air-to-ground munitions on it in addition to the reconnaissance equipment. The older OV-1 Mohawk, that was classic aircraft. The MS-760, the MS-1500, the IA-58 Pucara, the Yak-25 and 27. Those are obvious additions considering we already have, one of the bomber versions in the game. The Ki-76, the TS-11 Iskra, that's another classic aircraft from the Cold War era. The L-29 and L-39, the Mirage 3R, there's a good high-speed one for France. The G2 Galeb, the MB-326, the Foga Magister, or it might be Foja, I can't pronounce it. The Mosquito PR, the MiG-25R, and there were almost a dozen recon versions of the MiG-25. The RF-101A Voodoo, one of my all-time favorite aircraft. Of course, the SR-71, maybe eventually someday. The RB-47, or even more really basic low-tiered stuff that would be, down in rank 1, like the Fiesler Storch. There are an enormous number of potential aircraft that could get added into the game if a mechanic like this that didn't revolve around the destruction of player vehicles, was added into the game. And some of these aircraft, I mentioned the OV-10A Bronco and the Pucara, or even the Mirage 3R, the recon versions of the aircraft were occasionally still armed. So, having the reconnaissance equipment might not really exclude having some combat potential as well on some aircraft. So it's something to think about. And it's another element where, adding something like this in would really give some dynamic gameplay options for players in the game who aren't really trying to focus on just the super narrow dogfight furball meta. Or what's going to become the super narrow BVR missile shot meta. So, anyway, I'll shut up. I just wanted to make a bit of a, well, I was about to say quick video, but I realize it's been going on for a while. I wanted to make a video and show you guys what I sent over to Gaijin. Hopefully spark some discussion down in the comments about why you absolutely hate this. This would destroy the game and you would quit War Thunder forever if they did this. Or maybe some ideas on, like, areas you think in this proposal that could be tweaked, or how they could make it better, or other gameplay mechanics relating to reconnaissance that I didn't even think of. And again, also just to kind of demonstrate, this is the sort of thing that I'm doing with the communications channel I have to the devs. I'm not just sending them little bitchy notes about how the F-14 is overpowered, or how, the A-10 and the Su-25 have broken air battles at their BR with their all-aspect missiles. They hear that from thousands of other people. I'm trying to send things over that are constructive and maybe give suggestions for new stuff that they could add in to, have stuff like this, new gameplay mechanics. Or the one I sent before that, that had all the proposal for the more modern bomber gameplay and redefining and reworking how strategic bombers would work in the game. But in any case, I'll shut up for now. This was the proposal I sent over for implementing reconnaissance aircraft and their game mechanics into War Thunder. As always, thanks for watching.